with the Devil. It's directed by Angley. It stars Skeet Ulrich, who played Billy in the Scream series. That's the only thing I recognized him from. Or the first Scream movie. And then Tobey Maguire is also in this. And the country singer Jewel. It is a very underappreciated film about a very complicated time in America's history, the Civil War. This film was released in 1999 and underperformed greatly at the box office. I think it lost money whenever I looked it up. It is my favorite film depicting this American Civil War, yes, even more so than Cold Mountain and Gone with the Wind. Not saying it's a better movie than Gone with the Wind, but it is my more favorite. Even more so than Captain America Civil War. This film depicts a very complicated time in America's history, and it's just a complicated film, like overall. It doesn't go how you think it's going to. There are several scenes, several instances throughout the movie where I thought it was going to do the characters were going to choose one thing and they end up choosing something different. It depicts the Kansas-Missouri border war, and I looked it up, and most of it seems to be, on point with history and everything, and in that regard it's a good history lesson as well for someone like me who didn't really know that much about this time or what was going on with Kansas and Missouri, where their allegiances lie. The film begins with a wedding, like a lot of great films like The Godfather and stuff like that. It has a very happy type moment at the start of it, and then from there, pretty much most of the film is very somber and dramatic and emotional and stuff like that, except for maybe the end. But it is about two young boys, and we follow them through several years, actually. It takes place over a long portion of time. And I do need to mention, this is the director's cut on Criterion. It's quite a bit longer than the theatrical cut that was released. But yeah, it follows two young boys as they go throughout the war. Jack Bull is played by Skeet Ulrich, and Jake is played by Tobey Maguire. And he is more of our protagonist in this film. He starts out very innocent and happy-go-lucky and positive and everything, and several events change him as the movie goes along, and it's a really interesting character arc. That's one thing I really like to look for whenever I'm reviewing films and stuff like that, or whenever I'm just watching films, is do the characters change, or are they exactly the same from start to finish? And he is dramatically different by the end of this film through the pain and everything that happens throughout. Jake and Jack very early on joined the Bushwhackers, which are a Confederate-leaning group of almost like a militia, or they fight in guerrilla warfare and stuff like that. It is important to note that they are not Confederates. I looked it up. They were not officially in the Confederate Army. They were someone who was fighting for that same cause, unfortunately, because there were Jayhawkers, is what they were called, who were north-leaning, and they came in and did some really bad, really nasty stuff to a lot of the people there, which is what sets this film's plot in motion. We then pick up a long time after, I think it says a year later, after they join, and we see them in a much different state. Physically and emotionally, you can already tell that they've already changed a lot. We then get to meet this film's best character to me, and most intriguing character, played by Jeffrey Wright. He's popularly known as Felix Leiter in the James Bond series. He's also in Westworld and Catching Fire. He's in a few things, but he gives the best performance I've ever seen him give as a former slave who is serving with the Bushwhackers, which is very interesting because, like I said, they're the Confederate-leaning group, and he has several interesting conversations about why he's serving them. He's a very loyal character. His relationship with Jake and with a character played by Simon Baker, the TV's The Mentalist, that guy, is very interesting. In fact, the best scene in this film comes when there's a lady that's bringing them food to the Bushwhackers, and she's being very mean and everything to Jeffrey Wright. She's like, why is he allowed in here and all this stuff, and she asks, she says something about him being owned by Simon Baker, and Simon Baker sticks up for him. It's a very interesting scene. He's like, I do not own him. He fights by me. He's my best friend and all this stuff. And he gives such a great performance, Simon Baker does, and Jeffrey Wright does as well, that it's a really moving scene, and it was probably my favorite scene of the whole film. Isn't all dramatic at the same time. It has some really good action scenes. I when I say action, because it's not exactly like running around shooting and stuff like that. It's more so like slow, like kind of Western type scenes where they're like in a building, like shooting. It is very brutal. There's several characters that get limbs taken off and stuff like that. It's very bloody, and it's a very brutal film, and it doesn't shy away from taking away characters that you think are there to stay, or you think are nothing's going to happen to them. Something huge might happen to them and might change their entire character's progression or their arc or whatever. It does introduce a love interest, which to me was probably the weakest part about this film. No offense to Jules, she's a fine actress. I haven't seen her in anything else, but she's fine in this movie. But the character just seems kind of oddly placed. It kind of seems shoehorned in because, you know, they're out fighting and everything like that, and then suddenly this like very like attractive woman comes in and starts like talking to them and comes back, and they encounter her in like random situations too, and it just seemed shoehorned in to me because they wanted to have a love interest in this movie. That's probably the weakest part about this film, but at the same time, it's not terrible. I should also mention there's a really interesting parallel between Jeffrey Wright's character of Holtz, who is a black man fighting for people who want to keep slaves. Very interesting. And Tobey Maguire's character, who is of German descent, who also is not viewed in a good light by these people. By his own people, the Bushwhackers. It's interesting because the Germans tend to side with the North and everything. So throughout the film, both Tobey Maguire's character and Jeffrey Wright's character are just ridiculed so much, and it's interesting to see the parallels between them. There's actually a very powerful scene, very sad scene, where the Bushwhackers are in their camp playing, they're gambling, and they run out of money, so one guy puts down a scalp of a black man, and another guy's like, I'll raise you, and he puts down a scalp of a German man, and it's just, oh my god, it's so sad and so powerful, because you see Holtz, Jeffrey Wright's character, look at Tobey Maguire's character like at the same time, and it's just like, oh my god. Very, very heavy stuff in this film. I can't do a review without giving props to Angley. What a great director he is. You know, he was very brave for making this film, a film that, for the most part, has a viewpoint of the Bushwhackers, the southern-leaning group of men, and it doesn't shy away from like some of the awful things that the Jayhawkers, who leaned with the North, did as well. It doesn't paint good guys and it doesn't paint bad guys. It's very complicated. Like I guess the theme of this film is complications. But it's a very brave film in that it is super long. That's probably the biggest barrier of entry for this movie, is how long it is. It takes place over several years, like I said. With that it takes place over several years, it also has several different climactic scenes in it, whether it's a battle or a main character dying or someone from the past. The very end scene is very interesting because throughout the film there's a rivalry between one of the Bushwhackers and Tobey Maguire's character, where you can clearly see that the antagonist of this film is someone in his own encampment, one of the other Bushwhackers, and it all comes boiling to a scene where they cross each other well after the war, well after they've already lost, and well after the war, and they have a discussion. You know, you see Tobey Maguire's like moved on, and he has several different things have changed about his character where, you know, he could see the wrong in them for fighting for the South and everything, and this other character is still leaning towards the Confederates and everything like that, and it all comes to like a very big climactic scene that was very I guess satisfying, if you can say that. I was talking about the parallels between Holtz and Jake earlier, and there are similar parallels between Jake and Pitt, the antagonist that I was talking about. At the start of the film, whenever we're introduced to Pitt and Jake, they're on the same path. You know, they hate everything about the Jayhawkers. They want to kill them all and everything like that. And throughout the film, Jake is ridiculed and like made fun of and everything, and really looked down upon by his own men, the Bushwhackers, which is very interesting to me and very strange to me that he stayed with them through most of the film. And a big like antagonizer is Pitt. The whole time he's like looking down on him and like pressing him to do more and everything like that. This film has a very huge climatic battle at Lawrence, Kansas, which is probably the most famous battle that this film depicts between the Bushwhackers and the Jayhawkers. And like history tells us, they were not good guys when it came to that battle. They were not nice. They were awful. They went through that city and did such cruel things to the women and the children, and they just annihilated every man that they found. And the old men, the young men, it was just really hard to watch at times in this movie. During that battle, we see a huge change in Tobey Maguire's character of Jake, and there's a very interesting scene where Pitt finds Jake and he's just pushing him harder and harder and telling him, kill this person, bring this person out in the street, let's blast him away and all this stuff. And you know, Jake finally stands up and he's like, no, I'm not going to do this, and stuff like that. I also should say that this is based off a novel by Daniel Woodrell. He did Winter's Bone was another thing that he did. And the writing's really good, obviously, like if I'm talking this highly of the film. And as far as other technical things go, the cinematography is really, really good. It was done by a guy who'd previously done other Angley films like The Ice Storm, and he also did Blue Velvet, like the David Lynch film. And the music is really good too. It has really good like orchestral type music that you'd find in like these big epics like this. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is. You know, it takes place over such a long period of time. It has a huge cast, has grand battle scenes with lots of extras and everything. It is an epic. It is a Civil War epic. I said earlier, this movie through and through is my favorite Civil War film. It does a tremendous job of taking such a complicated story and not telling it to us in a way that is movie-fied, you know, where it's like, our protagonist only does good things or the antagonist only does bad things. It's all over the place, honestly, with how it presents those characters. You know, it just tells us a story, and it, like I said, it's a grand epic, and the battle sequences are really good. All the technical stuff is really good. I honestly love this movie, and it's so underappreciated. I've met maybe 2 people that have seen this movie, which is crazy because I have a lot of like film-loving friends and everything like that. I would highly recommend you pick up the Criterion release. There's some really good bonus features on here that go into like the making of the film, and the director's cut is can't miss. It's so good. I've thought long and hard about this, but I can't give this anything else than a 10 out of 10. I think this is a masterpiece that I hope some of you might take my advice and actually check out. Even if you don't buy it, like maybe like stream it or something like that on Amazon Prime or anything. I just think it's so good, and I if you're a huge film lover, I feel like you would just love it. Like on a technical aspect, on a storytelling aspect, on an acting aspect, it's such a great film, and I hope some of you will take my advice and check it out. I hope you guys have enjoyed this like more like analyzed type review that I did of this one. I will be doing more of these for older films that I really, really like, and you should be seeing those up soon. Hey, you made it to the end. Good job. Did you like the video? Did you not? If you did, give me a subscribe, give me a like, give me a comment, give me a kiss, give me something. I don't know, just give me something.